The Quiet Unraveling. The morning fog wrapped London like silk drawn too tight, soft, beautiful, suffocating. Jason Morland stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with the precision of a man who lived by control. His reflection looked sharp, composed, powerful. Behind him, barely reflected in the glass, Amelia sat by the window, sipping her coffee in silence. To everyone else, she was the perfect wife, elegant, quiet, effortlessly graceful. To Jason, she was the background to his success, a still figure that made his life look complete. Their house in Kensington was the kind of place people wrote about in magazines: glass walls, polished marble, a chandelier that scattered light like ice. Every inch screamed perfection. But it was cold perfection, sterile, echoing, untouched by warmth. Amelia filled that silence like air fills a room, invisible but essential. She moved quietly, spoke little, smiled when expected. Jason told himself she liked it that way. He believed her calm was contentment. The truth was, he'd never asked. He met her years ago at a charity gala, the kind of event where champagne flowed and people spoke in half smiles. She'd worn a simple black dress that night. Under the glow of chandeliers, she looked like the quietest person in the room, and somehow that silence pulled him in. Jason thought her stillness meant peace. He didn't see it for what it was: survival. Their marriage became a photograph, beautiful, static, and increasingly out of focus. In public, they were ideal. In private, they were strangers sharing oxygen. Mornings passed in silence. Jason scrolled through emails, adjusted his cufflinks, left without a word. Amelia stayed by the window, watching the city wake up, her coffee growing cold. She'd long stopped waiting for him to notice. At night, she read while he scrolled through his phone. The room filled with blue light and distance. The absence between them had texture now, something you could almost touch. Then one winter evening, Jason came home from a gala alone. He'd stopped asking Amelia to join him. It was easier not to. The house was dim, the fireplace fading. The kind of quiet that presses on your ribs. He placed his keys on the table and saw it, a white envelope. His name, written neatly. Jason Morland. He frowned, tore it open. Inside, divorce papers. He stood there, frozen. The fire cracked once, then went still. He read every word twice, as if repetition could rewrite the meaning. But it didn't. It was her silence, finally speaking. His breath caught. Amelia was gone. He called out her name once. No answer. Her closet, empty. The books, neatly stacked. The house, untouched. She hadn't left a note. She hadn't needed to. That night, Jason felt something he hadn't in years. The full weight of quiet. Not the comfortable kind, but the kind that shatters you. Days blurred. People told him, "She'd come around." But even her lawyer's letters sounded final. He tried to go back to work, to routine, but everything felt like an echo of itself. Her absence filled every room, louder than her presence ever had. One evening, searching for meaning, Jason found an old photo album. Their wedding day, Amelia smiling faintly, him looking straight at the camera. Only now did he notice the distance in her eyes. She'd been fading even then, and he'd never seen it. That realization hollowed him. Weeks passed. The house stayed quiet, but the quiet had changed. It wasn't hers anymore. It was his. He wandered through the rooms at night, chasing ghosts of conversations that never happened. Then one night, he found it. A small leather notebook on her writing desk. Inside, in delicate handwriting, the first line read, "Some people don't want to hear you because if they did, they'd have to change." Jason's throat tightened. He turned the pages, Reflections, fragments of pain, sentences that read like breathless confessions. She had been living beside him, invisible, writing her voice back onto paper because he never asked for it aloud. For the first time, Jason understood that her silence had never been empty. It was armor. He stared at his reflection that night and saw a stranger, a man built from noise and absence. For the first time, he saw himself the way Amelia must have, as someone who listened only to the sound of his own success. And beneath it all, the quiet truth waited. He hadn't lost her suddenly. He'd been losing her for years, one silent morning at a time. Rain had become the metronome of Jason's days. It ticked against the glass, steady and unrelenting, the sound of time moving on without asking permission. 4 months had passed since Amelia left, yet every morning he woke to the same question echoing through his chest. When did she stop being mine? He moved through the house like a ghost haunting his own life. Her mug still sat by the sink. Her perfume lingered faintly in the hallway. The absence was complete, but the traces were everywhere. At work, Jason went through motions, speaking words that meant nothing. People talked about quarterly reports, mergers, numbers, all noise. He nodded, pretending to listen. Inside, there was only the echo of silence. One evening, he left the office early, unable to sit through another meeting. On the drive home, a soft violin melody played on the radio, haunting, delicate. Something about it made his chest tighten. It took him a moment to remember why. Amelia used to play the violin. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. How had he never really listened? He had mistaken her quiet for weakness. Now he understood. Silence could be rebellion too. The next day, driven by a mix of guilt and need, he began searching for her. Not physically, but in pieces of her past. He called her old acquaintances, asked questions he should have asked years ago. One of them, Claire, an art professor with silver hair and sharp eyes, agreed to meet him. When she saw him, her expression was a strange blend of pity and restrained anger. "Jason Morland," she said softly, sipping her tea. "You finally decided to look for her." Jason hesitated. "Do you know where she is?" Claire's gaze didn't waver. "No," she said, "but I know where she was long before she left you." Her words landed like a slap. "She used to paint, you know," Claire continued. "She stopped after she married you. Said the house was too quiet for color." Jason's throat tightened. "I didn't stop her," he said weakly. "No," Claire replied, standing. "You just never noticed she'd stopped." She reached into her bag and handed him an envelope. "She left this with me a while ago. I think you were never meant to read it, but maybe now you should." That night, Jason sat at his desk, staring at the envelope until the room grew dark. When he finally opened it, Amelia's handwriting greeted him. Precise, calm, devastating. "Jason, I'm not writing to blame you. I'm writing because silence has weight, and I can't carry it anymore. I once believed love meant being still, letting you fill the room, letting you be the sound. But stillness became a cage, and I stopped breathing inside it." Jason closed his eyes, pressing the paper to his forehead as if her words could pass into him by force. He could almost hear her voice, soft, tired, resigned. "People called me graceful. They said I was calm, patient, perfect, but no one ever asked if I was happy. Not even you." He let out a breath that sounded like a sob. It wasn't anger he felt. It was erasure. The slow horror of realizing he'd loved an idea, not a person. Days passed. He read the letter again and again until he knew every curve of her handwriting. He stopped sleeping, stopped pretending to work. The house became an echo chamber, filled with the weight of things unsaid. One night, half drunk on regret, he thought he saw her through the rain, a figure walking under a black umbrella near the river. He ran outside, heart pounding, calling her name into the wet air. But when he reached the street, there was no one. Only rain and his reflection trembling in the puddles. He realized then that Amelia's absence had become his mirror. In losing her, he was finally seeing himself. A week later, while sorting through papers, he found a mention of an art exhibit in a local paper. Echoes of Silence, a new gallery by emerging artist Amelia Morland. His heart stopped. She hadn't vanished. She'd found her voice. He went that evening. The gallery was small, minimalist. White walls, dim lights, quiet footsteps. Every photograph was black and white. Women, faceless, framed in doorways, reflected in glass. Each image radiated stillness and defiance. On one wall, a small note read, "For all the women who were told that silence was grace." Jason stood frozen, tears welling. The words weren't addressed to him, but they pierced like confession. Then he saw it, a photograph titled Freedom. A woman, her face obscured by mist, staring out of a window. He didn't need to read the name. He knew. Amelia. He stood there for a long time, unable to move. The gallery around him faded into blur. For the first time, he didn't see her as a quiet wife. He saw her as an artist, survivor, someone who had rebuilt herself from silence. That night, Jason drove home under the rain. He didn't turn on the lights. The house felt hollow but honest, as if it had finally exhaled. He sat on the floor beside the fireplace and read the last line of her letter again. "If you remember me someday, remember my silence, because that's where you'll find yourself." He read it aloud, and for once didn't feel the silence that followed. For the first time in his life, he let it stay. London had become a city of ghosts. Every corner held a memory Jason couldn't escape. A cafe where they once sat in silence, a streetlight that used to flicker outside their window. The city kept moving, but he stayed behind, orbiting the emptiness she left. Months blurred together. Jason no longer looked like the man in the papers. His sharp suits hung loose, his eyes hollowed out. He'd stopped going to the office, stopped pretending. He'd lost interest in everything but the quiet itself. On his desk sat the same leather notebook, Amelia's notebook. He never opened it anymore. He didn't have to. Every line was carved into him now, burned behind his eyelids. Then, one cold morning, a small headline on the back page of the paper caught his eye. "Local artist found dead in the Thames." No name, no details, just that, but Jason didn't need more. He knew. He sat perfectly still. The world around him went soundless, like a film cutting to silence mid-reel. The clock ticked once, and then stopped, or maybe he stopped hearing it. That night, he walked down to the river. The fog was heavy, curling around the bridges, muting the city's lights. Police tape fluttered near the water's edge. Someone had placed a bouquet of wilted flowers nearby. He stood there until the cold seeped through his bones. When he finally turned back home, the city felt foreign, as if it belonged to another lifetime. In the house, he went straight to her notebook. The last page was blank, or almost blank. Under the lamplight, faint indentations marked where words had once been written and then erased. He tilted the page toward the light. Slowly, the ghost of a sentence appeared. "Some silences can't be undone." Jason's breath hitched. He sat back, holding the notebook to his chest. The truth hit him like a quiet explosion. She hadn't left to escape him. She'd left to save what was left of herself. The next morning, he went to the gallery one last time. It had already closed, the windows covered in white paper, the walls stripped bare. But in one corner, leaning against the wall, was a half-finished canvas. A man's portrait. Familiar. Haunting. The face was his. Eyes closed, expression peaceful, as if asleep. Below it in small, trembling handwriting was a single phrase. He finally saw. He stared at it for a long time. The painting wasn't cruel, it wasn't vengeful. It was honest. That night, Jason returned to the river. He brought Amelia's notebook with him. The moonlight shimmered on the surface of the Thames, silver and endless. He opened the notebook one last time, touched the first page, her first words to him, and then let it go. The notebook drifted on the current for a moment, pages fluttering like wings before sinking into the dark. He whispered into the fog, "I hear you now." No one answered, but that was the point. Weeks passed. Then months. London moved on. Jason didn't. He sold the company, the house, the cars. He disappeared quietly, without headlines or farewells. Years later, on a small coastal town miles away, a fisherman would see an old man sitting on the shore at sunset. Every evening, same spot, same time. Sometimes a child would stop and ask, "Why do you always watch the sea?" And Jason would smile faintly and say, "Because sometimes the quiet tells you everything." One morning, he didn't come down to the shore. Neighbors found him sitting by the window, eyes closed, a faint smile still on his lips. In his hand was a worn photograph, Amelia in that black dress from so many years ago. On the back, written in his own handwriting, were 3 simple words. "Now I hear you." The end. The Quiet Unraveling. A story about the silence that speaks when love finally listens.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next story.